Both of my parents passed away when I was small, and I relied on my twin sister in the orphanage in my former life. A pair of instructors once intended to adopt me. My sister went down on her knees and implored me to let her have that chance. I felt sorry for her for a moment and allowed her to be adopted. Unexpectedly, the following day, another couple, who were traders, arrived. They instantly favored me, and I smoothly became their daughter. Many years later, I attained tremendous success in my career and made it onto the Forbes list of the wealthiest individuals. However, my sister turned into a girl covered in tattoos, living a reckless life, and she sought refuge with me. I took her in kindly, yet she blamed me for grabbing the life that should have been hers. She ended up slaying me with a knife. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day those instructors wanted to adopt me. Your name is Lily, right? This little one seems so clever and lovable and really stands out. Lily, will you join us, Auntie and Uncle, and become our daughter? Don't worry, we will definitely treat you as our own child. Recognizing this familiar scene, I immediately understood I had returned to that moment. My twin sister and I were both 10 years old at the time. If everything proceeded as it had before, Hannah would soon kneel and plead with me to let her have the opportunity, since we both thought a teacher's household was a fine option. Reflecting on this, my expression darkened, realizing my kindness back then paved the way to my downfall. All of a sudden, I heard Hannah's urgent voice. Sister, hurry and accept. You should secretly rejoice that such educated folks want to adopt you. Sister, it's a blessing that they like you. Why aren't you gratefully agreeing right away? Be careful. If you let this pass, you'll be stuck in the orphanage forever. Seeing how differently Hannah behaved compared to my last life, I quickly realized she had also returned in time. She was pushing me to say yes, just so I'd be out of her way, letting her easily get adopted by tomorrow's wealthy couple. With that in mind, I smiled faintly. Since she longed so much for that so-called upper-class future, I, as her older sister, wouldn't block her path to a good life. Staring at the hopeful faces of the teacher couple, I nodded firmly. This time, I'm willing to go with you. My new parents beamed with excitement. Really? Wonderful. We finally have a daughter. Lily, don't worry. We'll devote ourselves to nurturing you. After hearing that, I noticed Hannah exhale in relief, followed by a cutting remark from her. Sister, I'm so envious that you're being adopted by such a good family. Look at me. I'm still clueless about when I'll be taken in. I replied meaningfully, Hannah, don't worry. Your luck isn't far off. Soon, the adoption was finalized, and the time to part arrived. Though we were biological sisters, neither of us felt any sorrow. Hannah revealed her true nature, unable to hide how pleased she was with herself. Sister, you probably have no idea. When you join a teacher's family like theirs, they'll make you study a lot, limit your social life, control what you wear, and forbid you from getting any tattoos, claiming it'll hurt your chances at civil service jobs. Meanwhile, I'll be taken in by wealthy people, surrounded by unlimited designer clothes and bags. Years later, with my family's backing, I'll also join the Forbes list of the richest. But don't worry, sister. Since we're siblings, if you ever can't make ends meet and kneel to beg me, I'll still offer you a janitorial job at our company. I stayed quiet because she would soon discover how steep a price comes with that kind of life. Then I accompanied my adoptive parents home. Scanning the space around me, I saw a cozy place, not large, but brimming with warmth. The living room walls were adorned with pictures of my adoptive parents, unmistakably a loving family. To celebrate my arrival, my adoptive dad tied on an apron and displayed his cooking expertise in the kitchen, while my adoptive mom clasped my hand and gently asked about my preferences and daily routines, trying to understand me better. Little by little, my eyes welled up. Being genuinely cared for was something I had never experienced. In my previous life, the merchant couple took me in, but I was mostly left to the nanny. We rarely crossed paths, and sometimes they traveled abroad for months on business, leaving me unseen. Whenever they were home, they mainly asked about my academic performance, unconcerned with other aspects of my life. Outwardly, it appeared that I wore designer labels and lived affluently, but it was all brought about through my own endeavors. After all, they often said, our family won't support anyone idle. I was raised in that stifling environment, started my own venture in college, and gradually made my way in a cutthroat business world, never feeling the warmth of a true home. Hannah, the family you belittled so much, was everything I had once gone without. The next day, after a phone call, my adoptive parents wore complicated expressions. Finally, my dad spoke softly. Lily, your sister was adopted by a very wealthy family, rich traders. Isn't that good news? Mom, Dad, we should be pleased for Hannah. My new parents exchanged looks, hesitant to speak. I understood they were concerned I might feel upset, so I quickly reassured them. Mom, Dad, Hannah is my sister. Since she was taken in by rich folks, I sincerely wish her the best. Don't worry, I won't feel jealous. In my eyes, our family is in no way inferior. They visibly relaxed. Lily, don't fret. From now on, Dad will work extra hard so you too can live well. Lily, thank you for being so understanding. Our home might not be as lavish as the one adopting your sister, but we'll never let you suffer. They would never behave as though they were better than me, or act as if they ruled over my life. Instead, they felt guilty for not being able to provide me with enormous wealth. Such wonderful parents, and Hannah never appreciated them. Whether in our past lives or now, she would face the consequences of her grand ambitions sooner or later. A week later, my adoptive parents enrolled me in a nearby elementary school, placing me in the 4th grade. Even though my mind was that of an adult and the primary curriculum felt basic, I still found joy in getting another shot at growing up more calmly. After finishing elementary school, I got accepted into the best junior high in the city with the highest score. Unexpectedly, Hannah also passed the exam for this junior high with the second highest score, landing in the same class as me. I hadn't seen her for 2 years. She was dressed head to toe in luxury items, and her backpack alone cost 5 figures. A private driver ferried her to and from school each day. Clearly, her life in that household was going smoothly. After all, as an adult mentally, she had an edge over normal kids. It must have been effortless for her to grasp the primary level subjects, leading that wealthy couple to see her as a gem, willing to spend on her generously. When Hannah realized I was top of the class, she looked scornful. What good is being the top student? Your adoptive parents are just teachers with limited futures, surviving on meager fixed wages that can't even buy one of my bags. My adoptive parents are significant company owners. I have a personal nanny to handle my daily needs: food, housing, clothing, everything. The best part is they barely stay home and don't meddle in what I do. They also give me 500,000 yuan a month as allowance. Lily, the gap between us has been huge from the start. In the future, I'll take over the business and appear on the Forbes wealth list, while you'll remain an insignificant nobody struggling to survive. I smirked. Those in business chase profits above everything. What you think is their kindness is actually clearly tagged with a price. Hannah, you'd better hope your performance never drops, or you'll discover what happens when you lose your worth. Oh, sister, you're obviously just jealous of my current situation, Hannah said, face brimming with pride. I understand you feel resentful that you didn't get adopted by the wealthy couple, but that's how fate works. You're destined to remain at the bottom this time, without any chance to rise. Observing her stubbornness, I kept silent. I chose not to spend any more breath on her because I believed real-life events would soon deliver a severe lesson. In the days that followed, backed by her wealth, she acted high and mighty at school. It became typical for her to snooze during lessons, play on her cell phone, talk back to educators, and pick on classmates in between sessions. Moreover, she boasted indeed she could just quit studying and head home to inherit her family's company anytime she wanted. By saying that, she not only gathered a bunch of flatterers, but also made teachers hesitant to keep her in line. Behind the scenes, she demanded I hide our relationship, although I had no interest in it and kept working hard. The school material was far too easy for me, so I began exploring math contest questions. Soon afterward, we had our first junior high monthly test. Since I was a Stanford graduate in my past life, the junior high exam papers were no challenge for me. Shortly, the scores were out. I took the top spot, while Hannah fell below the grade's top 50. When she noticed the results, she acted dismissive and purposefully yelled my name in class. Lily, you did pretty well on this test. I hope you maintain it, so you'll be fit to work for me later. Hannah's toadies joined in with sarcastic remarks one by one. What's the benefit of being a good student? Maybe she still won't qualify to work under Hannah someday. Hannah is pretty and loaded. So what else does Lily have besides good grades? Even if Hannah doesn't study, she'll just inherit her family's assets. But Lily's only path is academics. There's no comparison. Hannah listened happily to her classmates' flattery and eyed me with a mocking expression. Yet, to her dismay, I remained calm. immersing myself in math exercises. My composure made her appear ridiculous. Enraged and humiliated, she strode up and slapped me across the face. Who do you think you're showing that face to? You think you can look down on me just because you ranked first? You're just a broke nobody, so if you dare give me that attitude again, I have 100 ways to get rid of you. I touched my stinging cheek, then sprang at Hannah, landing fierce slaps on her face repeatedly. Everyone in class stood rooted in shock, not daring to intervene until our homeroom teacher pulled us apart. At that point, Hannah's cheeks were puffed and reddened, and she wailed in a muffled voice, "Lily, just wait. My parents are home right now, and I'll tell them everything." Siding with her straight away, the teacher sneered at me. "Lily, who do you think you are? How dare you hit Hannah? So what if you have top grades? You'll still be nothing more than a foul laborer someday. Get down on your knees and apologize to Hannah right now, or when her parents arrive, you'll be in deep trouble." I glared back at the teacher and smirked. If you look down on foul laborers so much, why haven't I seen you become a business owner yourself? Or do you not consider that good enough? The teacher's face went from green to a splotchy purple. Gritting her teeth, she spat, "I want to see if you can still talk big when Hannah's parents get here." Let Hannah's adoptive parents arrive. That was precisely what I wanted. From my previous life, I knew that wealthy couple paid attention to their child's morality and academic performance before deciding whether or not to invest in them. If they learned that Hannah had not only slipped in her studies, but also used her family's status to throw her weight around at school, I wondered what the outcome would be. Hannah's adoptive parents, indeed, showed up within a half hour. Sobbing, Hannah rushed over, pointing at me. "Mom, Dad, it's her. She hit me. You must teach her a lesson." Watching Hannah howl so unattractively, I noticed a flicker of disapproval in her adoptive parents' eyes. Before they could ask anything, I spoke first. "Uncle and Aunt, I did start a fight. I'm first in our grade on this test, but Hannah isn't even in the top 50. She was displeased and picked on me, then hit me first, so I fought back for my own safety. Oh, and Hannah is always saying that her family has tons of money. She claims she doesn't need to study because she'll always be loaded, while someone like me, who has no funds, is just a nobody in society. Uncle and Aunt, are her statements accurate? In wealthy people's eyes, are we poor folks really just nobodies at the bottom?" As public figures, Hannah's adoptive parents started sweating right away. These days, people in the spotlight must watch what they say, or they risk their entire company. So they instantly denied it. Absolutely not. We live in a time when everyone is supposed to be equal. Whether someone is a boss or an employee, it's simply a job. There's no difference in status. Listen, child, money can run out one day, but knowledge in your mind can't be taken. You're so bright, I'm sure you'll succeed. Everyone's ancestors were poor once. How could we belittle those with little money? Hannah refused to believe it. She shrieked, "Mom, Dad, why are you being so courteous to that girl? She's just an ant you can squash. If I hit her, so what? Poor losers like her can only put up with it." I never expected her to dare fight back. Mom and Dad, you have to punish that girl. In the next moment, Hannah's adoptive father slapped her. Hannah, how did I raise you all this time? You've totally shamed me in public. Now apologize to Lily. Hannah's adoptive mother scolded her as well. It's one thing if you're not performing well academically, but you can't let your character deteriorate. Your allowance will be cut off for half a year. Maybe that'll help you reflect on your behavior. I can't believe you're using that kind of language at such a young age. Who taught you that? Right then, I spoke up with an air of innocence. I know who taught her. Our homeroom teacher did. Earlier, the teacher called me a foul laborer as well. The teacher paled in an instant, looking like she wanted to throttle me. Lily, don't fabricate things. When did I ever say that? Hannah, tell them the truth and help me out. Hannah, though not the brightest, could sense the situation clearly, so she quickly pinned it all on the teacher. Yes, it was the teacher who taught me. The teacher told me that I didn't need to study too hard since my family had money, and she also said I shouldn't forget her in the future when I inherit the company. The teacher was astounded. Hannah, how could you make that up? I never said any of that. But Hannah's adoptive parents were determined to find a scapegoat. Ignoring the teacher's protests, they promptly called the principal's office. By the following day, our class had a new homeroom teacher. After that ordeal, Hannah stopped acting so fearless. She listened in class and took down notes, which likely meant her adoptive parents had given her a stern warning. As for my classmates, they stayed politely distant from me, not daring to stir up any issues. I was content with that, spending my free time quietly doing math problems. The newly assigned homeroom teacher soon noticed my work. Seeing the pages of numbers on my scratch paper, she seemed amazed. Lily, I never expected you to be this gifted at math. Our school will join the National Junior High Math Olympiad soon, and I think you should register. The top prize is 50,000 yen. I was instantly intrigued. In my past life, I failed to participate due to various reasons, and I wasn't about to let that happen again. Upon hearing this, Hannah became as bitter as a sour lemon. Teacher, does Lily even understand what the Math Olympiad is? She only memorized everything to get her current grades. She probably can't make sense of those competition problems. All those numbers on her scratch paper are likely random scribbles. If Lily the Fool can join the Math Olympiad, then so can I. The teacher, aware of Hannah's wealthy background, carefully replied, but there are only 5 slots available at our school. Your grades might not be enough unless you speak to your parents about getting you in. A few days later, Hannah's name was conspicuously placed on the Math Olympiad list. She bragged proudly in class. I just mentioned it to my parents, and they secured a slot for me. They also said they'd give me a set of jewelry if I place in the competition. The students around her gushed, "Wow, Hannah, your parents really spoil you. We're so jealous. I wish I had parents like that." I couldn't help but laugh when I heard it. In my previous lifetime, every time I competed in an important contest, I got similar promises. Yet those rewards only doubled my stress, as it showed how seriously they took the event, making me nothing but a tool for their reputation. If I didn't do well, they wouldn't physically punish me, but their attitude toward me would become frosty until they deemed me worthless and discarded me entirely. Yet Hannah clearly hadn't figured that out. On the day of the competition, the other participants and I rode the school's bus to the venue, while Hannah arrived in her adoptive parents' fancy car. She attracted a great deal of attention and appeared exceptionally stylish, even throwing a challenging glance my way. I paid her no mind. The loftier her pretense now, the harsher her downfall would be soon. The contest proceeded without a hitch. The Olympiad math questions were no big deal for me, but Hannah flushed with panic, clueless about how to begin. Eventually, to restore order, the proctors had no choice but to remove her. After the exam, I spotted her adoptive parents looking furious. As I walked past, I overheard them grumbling miserably, "What's up with this kid?" She was so bright in elementary school. We thought she was a prodigy. It's humiliating that we adopted someone this clueless and reckless. A few days after we got back to school, Hannah still showed up. Whenever others asked where she'd been, she boasted rudely, "I stayed home for 2 days since I was upset." A curious student asked, "Didn't your parents scold you?" She replied, "Nope, they're very tolerant and don't care about my marks at all. They only want me to be happy." Then they went overseas for business right after my exam. Such an answer caused another wave of astonishment among her classmates. Time rolled on, and Hannah began to struggle even more once chemistry and physics started. Ultimately, she stopped studying altogether. She frequently bragged, "One day, even if my parents spare me just scraps, it'll last me a lifetime. Why work so hard?" Although she said this, I noticed she gradually cut back on expensive purchases until she ended them completely. When high school entrance exams came around, I got accepted into the best provincial high school with exceptional scores. My tuition was waived, and I even received a monthly 2,000 yuan stipend. My adoptive parents were so thrilled that tears welled up in their eyes, and they threw a grand banquet to celebrate my admission. I soaked up their affectionate care all summer long, an experience I never once had in my previous life. On the first day of the new term, my adoptive parents took me to school and left reluctantly. Unexpectedly, I ran into Hannah on campus. By all logic, her grades shouldn't have met the requirements for a top high school. Surprised to see me, she wore her usual superiority. "Lily, just accept reality. You worked so hard to get accepted here, while my parents only needed to make a call to get me in. I'm even in the best class. Look how much my parents treasure me. They're going all out to pave my future." Of course, those adoptive parents simply pulled strings to place her in the premier class, as they couldn't bear the shame of admitting their daughter couldn't qualify. In my past life, after I finished junior high, my adoptive parents took me abroad for an international school, raising me at their side. Ignoring her, I hurried to the assigned dorm to secure a decent bed. Sure enough, Hannah ended up in my same class. Once high school began, a tense, stifling vibe gripped the classroom. On the very first day, as soon as break arrived, everyone was already scribbling away, because this was the elite class. Except for Hannah, everyone earned admission through sheer effort and excelled academically. They pushed themselves to study like they'd skip meals just to solve more problems. Because of that, Hannah's obvious or subtle bragging about money failed to spark any attention, leaving her feeling ignored and annoyed. During a self-study period, she brazenly put on a movie through the classroom's multimedia display. This drew strong disapproval from classmates, and some stood up, intending to turn it off. Hannah promptly yelled, "Stop touching that! I'm being suffocated in this lousy class. Why can't I watch a movie?" The class leader stepped forward with a knitted brow. "Hannah, if you want to watch something, do it on your phone at your own seat. You're disrupting everyone else." Hannah scoffed. "You're all just study robots, so what if you score well? Do you even know who my parents are? They're company presidents, and I'll take over all their assets. With your status, meeting someone as important as me is your ancestors' blessing. If you had sense, you'd be sucking up to me. Once I inherit the business, maybe I'd let you be a low-level manager." Nobody budged from their disgusted expressions, and the class leader shut off the display, ignoring Hannah's protests. During the scuffle, Hannah got pushed down, and she erupted, "You bumpkin! How dare you shove me? I'm fragile. Can you afford it if I get injured?" Just then, the principal happened to walk in, taking in the commotion. Outraged, he scolded, "What a ruckus! A school is for learning, not for fighting." Hannah felt deeply wronged. I was only playing a movie on the screen for them to unwind, but they ganged up and bullied me. They didn't appreciate my kindness at all. "Principal, kick out the one who pushed me. If you don't, I'll get my parents here, and you won't be principal anymore." I merely shook my head at her foolishness. She thought she could scare him, but most high school principals have wide networks. Local authorities often respect them. How could a mere business owner threaten the principal's job? As expected, the principal was furious. "Hannah, get your parents to come here immediately. I want to see how they'll remove me from my position." Still oblivious, Hannah sneered, "Who do you think you are? My parents are abroad for work. You can't just see them whenever you want." The principal trembled with anger. "So you think I can't reach them? I'll look up their contact details in the education system right now." After saying this, he stomped out. Hannah paid it no mind until half an hour later, she got a phone call, fiddled frantically with her phone, and then froze, muttering, "This can't be real. He's just a principal. How could my parents freeze my card because of some old man?" She headed home that same day, since her homeroom teacher insisted she had broken school rules and had to be suspended for a week. Another violation would lead to immediate expulsion. When I spotted Hannah again a week later, all the light was gone from her eyes, and she began studying daily. Regrettably, she had been a slacker in her earlier life, and in this one, she never seriously worked on her basics either, so high school classes really challenged her. When she was stuck, she'd ask classmates, but nobody paid attention, so she could only approach teachers. However, if she still didn't get it after 2 explanations, she'd lose her temper and criticize their teaching methods. Over time, she built a bad reputation among the staff, who all avoided her. Meanwhile, I thrived in high school. My schedule was packed with classes and competitions that the school arranged for me. After just 1 year, I became the star student, winning more awards than I could keep track of, plus earning a considerable amount of prize money. In my second year, the classes were reshuffled, and Hannah landed in a regular section. One day, teary-eyed, she cornered me in the restroom. "Lily, does seeing me like this make you happy? Don't get too smug. I'm not finished yet. They don't have any other kids, so I'm all they have. They were only trying to scare me. One day, all their assets will still be mine." Though she spoke defiantly, her expression revealed the truth. I asked, "If you're so convinced they'll hand all their assets to you later, why are you panicking, Hannah? Nothing in this world is guaranteed. If you want the life you've always yearned for, you have to pay for it. Clearly, you can't handle the cost. Whether you ended up with the teachers or the merchants, you remain the same awful person." Hannah was startled. "You've been reborn too." But she quickly clenched her jaw. "Since you knew the merchant's family was like a pit of wolves, why didn't you warn me, Lily? You're so heartless. Why must I go through your pain all over again? What about our past life?" I moved in closer. "In our previous lifetime, you chose the teachers. Even though they weren't wealthy, they were broad-minded and caring, eager to shower you with love without forcing you to earn any accolades. But how did you repay them? You smoked, drank, covered yourself in tattoos, then blamed me for snatching the future you thought was yours, and you killed me. Hannah, you deserve to stay trapped in the mud forever." Infuriated and embarrassed, she tried to strike me, but I was quicker, landing a forceful slap on her cheek. I cautioned, "Watch yourself, or you'll get expelled." Hannah glowered, but ultimately didn't dare lift a hand again. Before long, senior year arrived. The shine she once had was gone. She wore the simplest uniform, and all her flashy accessories had vanished. By chance, I caught wind of a rumor that she'd been spotted selling her jewelry at a gold shop not long ago. People openly mocked her, yet Hannah still held her head high. "Who are you to laugh? My parents only cut my money out of anger. Once I behave and quit making trouble, they'll come around." But everyone kept viewing her as a joke. After all, she had always ranked at the bottom. In that final year, I skipped the college entrance exam because I was directly admitted to Tsinghua University. My adoptive parents made a huge scene, as if they wanted everyone to know their daughter was recommended to Tsinghua. Later, I heard Hannah's scores could only get her into a 2-year college, which was a humiliation to our prestigious high school. I merely smiled. That outcome was what I expected. During summer break, I spent a lot of quality time with my family. One evening, while we were all watching TV, a news segment grabbed my interest. Mr. and Mrs. Alexander, well-known local business people, adopted a girl who lost her parents many years ago. After extensive support and guidance, this girl has been admitted to Peking University, and the Alexanders are hosting a grand celebration to officially name her their heir. Alexander, wasn't that Hannah's current adoptive father? Seeing an unfamiliar girl on screen, I realized that long ago, the Alexanders must have taken in multiple orphans, hoping to pick the brightest as their successor. My adoptive father frowned. Lily, isn't that the family who adopted your sister? If he picked another girl to inherit, then what about your sister? I answered, Dad, don't worry about her. She set this in motion herself. Just days before the new term began, Hannah showed up at my door. Spotting my adoptive parents, she hugged them, bursting into tears. Mom, Dad, it's Hannah. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I want to come home. Mom and Dad froze in confusion. Seeing that scene, I was enraged and shoved her aside, standing protectively in front of them. Hannah, this is my home. Get out right now. She pleaded in desperation. Sister, I admit you've beaten me. Just let me have Mom and Dad again. Hannah dropped to her knees, sobbing pitifully. Sister, whatever path you follow, you always do well. It's not the same for me. I have no money and got kicked out. I have nowhere else to go. I'm in such a sorry state. Please give me back Mom and Dad. I eyed her coldly. I'm not trying to see who triumphs. I just want to live peacefully. You're an ungrateful wretch, and I won't let you hurt Mom and Dad again. She bared her teeth. We're blood sisters. Fine, give me some cash, and I'll go. Think of it as buying out our former bond. Bond? I let out a mocking laugh. Do you really believe there's anything left between us? Hannah, if you don't leave, I'm calling the police. Only then did she retreat unwillingly, but I worried she might still bother my adoptive parents while I was away, so I brought them with me to develop a life in Beijing. Before long, under my arrangements, my adoptive parents became middle school tutors, earning a decent income each month. When we came back for Lunar New Year, Hannah was nowhere to be found. With growing unease, I asked the neighbors. The mention of Hannah made them grimace. That girl today is downright shameless. After you left, she hung around the area all day. Some good Samaritans gave her food when they saw she was hungry, but she scoffed at it, tossed it aside, and even cussed them out as hillbillies. Later, a Phoenix man from this community offered to keep her for 2,000 yuan a month. Shockingly, she agreed. If she had taken a factory job, she would have made more, but who knows what she was thinking. Then the man's wife discovered it and gave her such a beating that she was barely recognizable. Probably humiliated, the girl ran off. Listening to them talk, I suddenly remembered that back when our parents were alive, Hannah had once innocently proclaimed she wanted to become a scientist and help all mankind. But everything had changed by now. My younger sister and I shared the same parents, and she was Grandma's favorite from birth. She was pampered more than many village boys. When I turned 18, I got to celebrate my birthday with her, and it made me so happy. Yet while I slept, Grandma led some stranger into my room for a so-called blind date. He violated me, but Grandma said I was lucky he fancied me. Under immense pressure, I was forced to marry him, while my sister took my dowry to pursue acting and become a celebrity. That man beat me to death. After opening my eyes again, I decided to hand my sister the so-called good fortune Grandma kept mentioning. "Today's your 18th birthday," Grandma told me. "I've prepared some nice clothes for you. Don't forget to change into them later." Looking at the bag she pushed into my hands, I realized for sure I had come back in time, reborn before the nightmare began. In my last lifetime, when Grandma first gave me brand new clothes, I naively wore them without a second thought. Scared my sister would snatch them, I hid away until right before the celebration to put them on. It was a vividly red dress, and Grandma approved of it right away. My sister shot me a bitter, jealous glare, as though she wanted to yank it off me. Sadly for her, guests arrived before she could do anything. Grandma had said she was throwing a party for my sisters and my 18th birthdays. Unexpectedly, we welcomed 3 strangers who looked fairly prosperous. Dad and Grandma greeted them excitedly. The moment that young man walked in, his gaze was fixed on me, and I avoided making eye contact. Growing up, my sister was always the center of attention, so she couldn't bear for anyone to notice me instead. She shoved me aside and stepped up to greet him, but Grandma quickly held her back, pulling me over for an introduction and casually seating me next to the young man. That evening, Grandma coaxed me into drinking wine, and I felt dizzy. That was the start of the horror. Grandma locked me in a room with that man, letting him assault me. I cried and tried to call the police, but Grandma and the others wouldn't allow it. In the end, they said the man had good prospects and forced me to wed him. Later, Grandma collected the bridal payment from his family to send my sister to acting school so she could become a star, and also paid for my younger brother's elite education. Suddenly, our family became the wealthiest in the village. I was left to endure domestic abuse and eventually died from the violence, with no one caring. After resurrecting, I quietly took the new outfit from Grandma. Returning to my room, I made a point of flaunting it in front of my sister. My entire life, I'd never worn anything new. Every piece of clothing I had, socks and undergarments included, were her hand-me-downs. Only when I started school did I learn it was unhygienic to wear someone else's underclothes. I asked my family for money to buy new ones, but Grandma scolded me for being picky, insisting I was lucky to wear whatever my sister used. Left with no choice, I had to save up on my own for proper underclothes. When my sister spotted the outfit I was holding, she was clearly just as envious as she had been in the previous life. "Why is yours bright red?" "I want that bright red one. Go wear the pink one instead." I pretended not to hand it over, but she stretched out her arm to grab it. I deliberately wrestled with her for a bit to stall, and only acted upset and relinquished the new outfit to her right before that family arrived. When we stepped out, the guests were already here. The moment I laid eyes on my husband William and my in-laws from my past life, my face went pale. Concerned that others might sense something off, I quickly bowed my head. When William noticed my sister in the bright red dress, his eyes sparkled as he stared at her in wonder. My sister and I were twins. Normally, I wore her cast-offs and looked disheveled, which was an obvious contrast to my sister in her vibrant attire, so telling us apart was easy. But with both of us dressed in new clothes, we appeared identical at first glance. Besides, Grandma had specifically told me to wear bright red. Sure enough, she mistook my sister for me and pulled her over to introduce her. "This is my granddaughter. She's 18. I sat to one side, wearing my sister's pink dress, watching her smugly accept compliments. I lowered my eyes and quietly scoffed, thinking, "Dear sister, you have no idea Grandma is about to sell you out." Later that evening, Grandma helped my intoxicated sister into a room, then shooed me away. "Olivia, you'll have to settle for the small guest room tonight." I nodded with no hesitation, as it was my sister's wedding night, with the brother-in-law she had once praised so highly. In my former life, when I was overwhelmed by domestic abuse and came home for refuge, my sister, already a star then, told me to be grateful. Brother-in-law is such a decent man. Everyone has faults. If you keep him satisfied, why would he hurt you? You should show brother-in-law more care. Let him feel some warmth in this family, so he won't be so hot-tempered. Sister, be more attentive to him. Love your man a bit more. That night, lying in the small guest room, I was filled with mixed emotions. I had always longed for this tiny space, yet never obtained it. Although there were free rooms in the house, Grandma insisted I share with my sister, not because of deep twin bond affection, but so I could serve as my sister's night attendant. The reason my sister was so adored by our boy, preferring Grandma, boiled down to a chance remark by a once destitute Taoist priest. At that time, Grandma was about to throw away both newborn daughters she considered burdens. The priest happened to pass by and pointed from afar. "This is the reincarnation of Olivia, born into a blessed family." Grandma, being superstitious, swallowed it instantly. By coincidence, the priest was gesturing toward the baby blanket in Grandma's arms, with my sister on the outer side, leading them to believe he meant her. From then on, she was Olivia, while I narrowly survived as Isabella. Sharing a room with Olivia meant she slept on a pretty princess bed, while I was stuck on a 1-meter-wide wooden single bed that squeaked whenever I shifted. She often grumbled that I disturbed her rest, yet still refused to let me move out, saying she feared the dark and needed me to flick the lights on or off if she got up at night. My little bed was right beneath the switch near the door. Late that night, lying in the small guest room, recalling it all, I suddenly heard a shriek, followed by the sound of a door opening and family members talking. I got up to watch the scene. Anyone observant could tell something was seriously wrong, but Grandma tried to cover it up, saying she probably had a nightmare. It's too late for any fuss. Go back to bed. I looked at the once again quiet room and thought about my past experiences. In that previous life, I was also roused in the night. Though William seemed mild and polite, He was thoroughly brutal beneath that facade. He clamped a hand over my mouth and held me down, continuing his abuse. Given a man's absolute physical advantage, my feeble resistance was pointless. I could only watch in horror as he destroyed me. After hearing Grandma's words, I remained silent. My father and younger brother actually knew the truth, but they were too selfish. In their view, trading us money-losing daughters to gain wealth was an excellent deal. As for Mom, I glanced at her vacant face. There was no jolting awake, someone already resigned and broken. She was fully under Grandma's control. Aside from having children and doing chores, she had no say in the household. In my past life, when I returned crying for help, she merely embraced me and wept. It's fate, it's fate. Everything will be all right if you just give him a son. The next day, William emerged from the room, fastening his belt with a pleased expression. Grandma flattered him, walking over to ask if he'd slept well. Seeing his satisfied nod, she told me, the supposed Olivia, to serve him breakfast. That was my first time receiving Grandma's breakfast treatment. Apparently, it was wonderful to be Olivia. I munched on my meal, ignoring Grandma's instructions. My sister would be awake soon, and my Olivia role would expire, so I had to eat fast and keep up my energy. Right then, as William sat at the table, the door burst open with a bang. Olivia glared furiously, her eyes puffy and reddened, with blotchy, suggestive marks on her neck, clear evidence of extreme assault. Grandma, call the police. Call them now. Having no clue what really happened, Grandma assumed her eldest granddaughter was just making a scene. She barked, "Stop it. Go get dressed and come have breakfast. Also, why are you wearing your sister's clothes? Take them off this instant." At that moment, Grandma still had an unusually sharp eye, noticing Olivia wore my clothes. Furious, Olivia began shouting hysterically. That was when Grandma finally gawked, eyes wide, then turned and stared at me at the dining table in disbelief. "Are you Isabella?" Setting down my chopsticks, I nodded. "Yes. Then why did you respond when I called Olivia?" I misheard. Grandma hollered furiously, rushing at me to hit me. I swiftly jumped aside, causing a bowl of preserved egg and pork congee she'd specially made to topple over the table, splattering everywhere. Grandma lost her senses and tried to seize me, while my sister screamed curses. Hearing the uproar, the rest of the family came out one after another. Worried the esteemed guest might get upset, Dad pulled William aside to hold him back. "Stop it. Cut it out." The living room was in chaos, but William pretended not to see. Realizing there was no meal to eat, he said coolly to Grandma, "I was very pleased yesterday. I'll head home now, and I'll send people over with the bridal gifts tomorrow." Then, not waiting for a single response, he strolled off. My sister snapped out of it. "Grandma, you just gave me away." Grandma, equally livid, turned around and demanded of me, "Why is your outfit on your sister?" After a while, my sister realized that she had effectively stolen my blind date, yet she refused to admit fault. She glowered at me. "It's you. You deliberately switched outfits with me." I played innocent. How could that be? I didn't even know Grandma set up a date. Besides, don't you always get first pick around here? You said you wanted the red one yesterday. That was the very first time Grandma bought me new clothes, and I didn't want to hand them over, but you grabbed them anyway. Recalling the tug of war over the dress, Olivia realized it was indeed her doing. But thinking about that man's promise to send over a bride price, she clearly wasn't ready to let go. Her dream was to become a famous actress, so she stifled her anger at the prospect of calling the police. Her eyes shifted, and she pulled Grandma aside, whispering, "Who knows what?" My younger brother lounged on the sofa like a lord, fantasizing about his bright future. Grandma said that once Master William becomes my brother-in-law, I can attend the elite high school in the city. Then I'll finally amount to something. Dad also looked as though he was already a wealthy in-law, thinking about building a lavish villa in the village for everyone to admire. Their expressions amused me. Olivia was no meek, family-loving girl in this life, unlike me before, who still cared about kinship. This time, I wanted to watch them all, who'd acted so supportive of one another, fight among themselves. Recalling how Olivia had glanced my way with plotting eyes, I felt a jolt of alarm. I hurried back to my room. After the events of yesterday, the space my sister and I shared was a total mess and reeked terribly. Forcing myself to bear it, I rummaged through Olivia's phone to send a text to the man who had just left. William was the son of a local big shot, a beast in human form, polite on the outside, but cruel within, and someone who liked to mistreat women. He looked youthful, but in truth, he had already been married twice. Both former wives couldn't handle his aggression and ended up divorcing him. He had a horrible reputation in the city, so he went to the countryside to search for a bride. He never imagined he'd find someone as young and attractive as Olivia, so he absolutely wouldn't let her go. Since Olivia wanted to resort to underhanded methods, I decided to block her path. I knew William's phone number, so I sent him a text saying my family intended to substitute someone else for me in the marriage and urged him to come forward and propose soon. To confirm that it was indeed Olivia who'd shared that relationship with him, I forced myself to pretend to be her, even praising my looks in the message. After Olivia rose to fame in those years, William repeatedly grumbled that he hadn't wed her. One twin felt like coarse bark to the touch, and the other was smooth as a peeled egg. Your Isabella household really used the inferior one to trick me. Recalling how William daydreamed about Olivia's face in my previous life, I worked hard to demean myself in that text. Then I reminded him to keep it confidential, and I erased the message. Outside, Olivia and Grandma had just finished negotiating. But before they could convince me, William's family arrived. Right then, my entire household tried to force me, through bribes or threats, to take my sister's place, allowing Olivia to keep pursuing stardom. I remained unmoved. Grandma's authority was challenged, so she prepared to strike me. I turned my gaze to James, the true treasure of the Isabella family. Only someone beautiful, like your second sister, can please William. I'm too rough, so what if the William family thinks we're just brushing them off? Also, if I'm gone, who'll manage everything for you? James couldn't say a word. In his view, he needed two sisters, one to marry for money, and another to remain at home as a caregiver. Perfect. At that moment, the William family arrived with great fanfare, accompanied by gifts and a matchmaker. Their early appearance threw the Isabella family off balance. The matchmaker was extremely adept, and upon entering, showered everyone with compliments so rapidly that the stunned Isabella clan couldn't cut in. Soon enough, she'd already planned out how many children they'd have and which schools they would attend. My sister, pampered since birth, couldn't stand being humiliated. She no longer cared about her image or her stardom dream and threatened to call the police. Watching the resulting bedlam, I kindly offered a reminder. Oh dear, if Grandma truly did anything illegal and family members get a criminal record, then James might never take the civil service exam. Actually, I just made that up. But to Grandma, having a public official in the family was a lifelong goal, even more appealing than tying us to wealthy in-laws. She'd often fantasized about her grandson bestowing honor on her. Grandma, who had been indifferent, suddenly slapped Olivia. My sister, always the favorite, couldn't tolerate this and ran out wailing so loudly that the entire village heard. Ultimately, it did no good. Even when the police came, every family member offered the same testimony. And aside from the conspicuous, suggestive marks on my sister's body, there was no visible harm. Her advantage of still being underage vanished on her birthday. Although Olivia wasn't old enough to legally marry, nobody cared in the countryside. It wasn't unusual to wed first and register later. In this way, Olivia's star ambitions were ruined, and she became William's spouse. Because of the mix-up with me and Olivia swapping outfits, the Isabella family was furious at me, blaming me for all the recent scandals. Once Olivia married, Grandma, visibly upset, began plotting where I would go next. James will be starting high school soon, and that'll cost a lot. Isabella, go get a job. It happens you can join the other villagers who are leaving for work. Olivia had managed to secure the entire bride price for herself. The William family didn't care who got the cash, as long as she agreed to the marriage. Grandma had wasted her efforts, yet she still needed me to make money. Ignoring her orders, I stayed silent until I ate my last bite. I'm planning to repeat a grade and retake the college entrance exams. I could have gotten accepted before, but I got food poisoning on exam day and skipped the final. I also suspect it wasn't a coincidence that Grandma prepared special meals for both me and Olivia during the exams. Plainly, she worried I'd excel, turn independent, and no longer be under her control. Grandma slammed her chopsticks on the table with a bang. Studying is pointless. This family has no funds. If you had it in you, you wouldn't need another chance. Why repeat? In the past, her outbursts scared me, but not now. The next day, I packed up and headed south to find work. Grandma thought she'd won and watched me leave confidently. Of course, I wouldn't repeat school right away. I needed to earn enough to pay for tuition, not to mention living costs. A month later, since I hadn't sent any money home, Grandma called me. I listened calmly as she ranted, unlike before when I would have been terrified. Once she ran out of steam, I spoke up. Grandma, I'm broke. It takes a lot to survive in a major city, so how can I save anything? Feigning poverty was something I'd seen often in my last life, so I learned it well. After my wedding to William, Grandma would visit for handouts, claiming my younger brother needed tutoring or my sister wanted to join some talent show. Excuses to demand funds. Now that Olivia had pocketed the bride price and despised the Isabella family for pushing her into marriage, Grandma couldn't approach her for help. James couldn't attend the elite school and blamed Grandma for her incompetence. Rumor had it Grandma went to see Olivia anyway but got driven away. Olivia, unlike me in that previous life, was spiteful, selfish, and cruel. She shoved Grandma out the door. Grandma tumbled and landed awkwardly in front of everyone, while Olivia pointed at her and accused her of freeloading and selling her granddaughter. The old lady, who cared deeply about her image, was stuck in front of a gathering crowd, then hobbled home in shame. James lacked the money for the top school, and with weak grades, he ended up in the local technical college. I thought I was finally rid of them, but Grandma soon arrived at my factory with my mother in tow. Gazing at these two disheveled figures, I stood there. Isabella, Grandma recalled it wrong, she said. It was actually you, the Taoist priest, meant by Olivia, not your sister at all. She smiled in a servile way. Look at your sister. She's livin' well, yet doesn't care about this family anymore. You're now the most promisin' one in the Isabella clan. She kept gushing, so it was the first time I'd ever seen her treat me so nicely. After she babbled until her mouth went dry and saw I stayed quiet, she nudged my mother forward. My mother carefully clasped my hand. In the past, both of us had the roughest hands in the family, but now that I'd been working away, mine had become smoother. Hers felt coarse against my skin. She ignored my attempts to pull away and tried to appease me. Isabella, your younger brother got beaten. You're the only one who can save him. Then came the same spiel about family ties, siblings, and so forth. Annoyed, I cut in. Just hurry up and say it. I haven't eaten yet, and the cafeteria will close. Finally, they explained the real issue. James, in that technical school, had fallen in with troublemakers and recently got into a fight, leaving someone hospitalized. Compensation was needed, but the family had no money at all. With Olivia gone and refusing to help, Dad sat at home, fantasizing about a rich son-in-law, while I'd sent no funds, so they were penniless. When I heard that, I rolled my eyes. Then go to Olivia. She's the wealthy one. At the mention of her, Grandma cursed. Ungrateful wretch. If I'd known you were bad luck, I would have drowned you at birth. Right after, she plastered on a smile again. Isabella, Grandma got confused. The Taoist priest's Olivia was you all along. The Isabella family's hope relies on you now. I dug around in my wallet and, under their eager gazes, pulled out 50 yuan. That's everything left. Grandma's eyes widened in fury, but she only managed to snarl, "You," for a while, without any follow-up. Realizing they wouldn't squeeze money from me, she threatened to complain to my factory superiors. I almost burst out laughing. She still assumed it was like her own era, when any factory leader would handle every problem. In the end, they were thrown out by security for causing a disturbance, and the guards put them on a blacklist. As long as I refused to answer their calls, they had no way to pester me. By the time I wrapped up work and returned home for the spring festival, the house was already deserted. I hadn't planned on coming back, but my residency booklet was still there. I'd looked into it and learned that once I turned 18 and had a place willing to take it, I could shift my registration. Beforehand, at the factory, a visiting official fainted from low blood sugar and almost got pulled into a machine, which would have minced him into pieces. I managed to grab him just in time. I didn't ask for some massive reward. Even if I did, I wouldn't have been able to hold on to it. Instead, I made a request, and upon hearing it, he grinned and said it was no trouble. Something that might be tough for regular people turned out to be a minor favor for certain individuals, which strengthened my resolve to repeat a year and study. I wanted to be someone like that too. I stealthily retrieved the residency booklet and was about to leave on New Year's Day. Grandma gazed at me uneasily and asked, "Aren't you staying until after the holiday?" She wasn't actually reluctant for my sake. It was just that I had given her some cash when I arrived, easing her suspicions and letting me succeed in my plan. I needed to move fast. Glancing at the empty house, I answered, "No. If I return to work over the break, I'll get extra pay." "Oh, right, right. You'll get holiday wages," she said flatteringly. James was crouched at the door in annoyance. Ever since his brawl, James had been kicked out of school. Paying for damages had wiped the household out, and Olivia never bothered to come see them. It seemed Grandma had finally lost hope in Olivia. Of course, I still harbored anger about the suffering I went through, all while they thrived off me. Deliberately, I brought up Olivia. "Is Sis coming tomorrow for the customary New Year visit?" Locally, married daughters came back to see their families on the second day of the holiday. Family arguments don't last forever. We can resolve everything and still be close, I said, throwing back her own line from my past life. With the residency booklet in hand, I got my transfer processed. The family of that official I rescued learned I'd saved him and treated me like an adopted daughter, even offering to sponsor my education. I wasn't too proud to accept a better path, so I quit my job at the factory and fully committed to repeating a year of high school for the college exam. By the time the Isabella family realized the booklet was gone, I had already left, making me impossible to track down. They must have gotten some idea from somewhere, because they actually went to the police and caused an online stir. A classmate in my repeat year section stumbled on their missing person post while browsing. That was how I found out about it. Am I that valuable that they had to contact law enforcement to hunt me down? With the police involved, I had no choice but to return. They put on quite a show, acting like loving parents whose daughter fled. The bloggers filming got all weepy, but I only felt a million eye rolls. Once they were gone, the Isabella family dropped their act. First, they raged at me for stealing the residency booklet, then for not staying home. You rescued an important figure. Didn't it occur to you to think of this family? Such a big payoff wasted. They tried digging around the factory. Finding out the truth wasn't hard. Still, no matter how upset and helpless they were, they had no real options. I kept quiet. Eventually, they stopped yelling. After a while, I peered at Olivia, looking smug by the sidelines. Had she reconciled with the Isabellas and made peace? Grandma eyed me with a grin that could flip faster than a page in a book. "We've got a perfect family for you, dear," she crooned, baring her gums in a broad smile. "They're definitely good folk. Once you're married, you'll be the lady of the house. You'll do just as well as your sister." Hearing that, Olivia's face went dark. Then she forced a sneer. "Yes, better than me. Grandma truly pampers my sister." I couldn't imagine they truly had me in mind for some windfall. Grandma rattled off details about the family's city business, mansions, villas, and how their son was an only child. If their standards were that high, they'd never want a country girl with just a high school education, unless it was the same switcheroo deal as Olivia's. I made no effort to disguise my stare as I measured up Olivia, who trembled in anger. She barely kept calm, but then Grandma's words about "your sister's in-laws still can't compare to these folks. These people admire smart students who excel at exams," finally broke her composure, and she burst into tears. My sister had always been gifted in the arts. Singing and dancing were her strengths, but she never did well academically. Back then, when our entrance exam results were announced, she tormented me with insults. She wanted to outrank me in everything. How could she tolerate seeing me marry up, even if the groom might be dense? Knowing her temperament, I took delight in flaunting. While Grandma and the rest went busy in the kitchen, I said, "Although this household outdoes the William family, at least the William folks are normal. But if I have total control of a big fortune and a gullible husband, well, that's not too shabby." Lately, I feel repeating a year is so stressful. Maybe I don't want to keep trying so hard. I described how, in the future, I'd have all the money I wanted, free to do as I pleased. Olivia started off annoyed, then grew pensive. She was clearly tempted. Why should I enjoy that kind of life while she stayed at the William place? Glamorous on the surface, but miserable behind closed doors. Judging by the look in her eyes, I knew what she was plotting. I had served as her personal servant from childhood, so I recognized her inside out. "Time to eat," Grandma called, beaming as if it were a wedding feast. The table was covered in rich dishes, and she fussed over me, filling my bowl and ladling soup like I was royalty. Once upon a time, Olivia and James had been the only ones who got that treatment, but now it was mine. No doubt the bride price for selling me off this time was generous. Oh, Isabella, the Daniel family's son is somewhat slow, but once you marry in, you'll be the real mistress. Don't forget your own family. Don't be like your sister, who acts like we're strangers now. Give your father and brother positions like general manager or chairman. And as for me and your mother, we're old, so any supervisory role will do. Grandma, gesturing with her chopsticks, seemed certain I'd fall in line. I could only muster a speechless scowl. Nearby, Olivia's expression brightened, obviously enticed. Having once been replaced in the William marriage fiasco, she must have realized she could swap again, especially since she and William hadn't even secured a license, so they weren't formally married. That evening, she and Grandma got cozy, like nothing had happened, whispering to each other with who knew what schemes in mind. The following day, Olivia showed up with a self-satisfied look. You're throwing away a good shot at college just to marry some clueless guy? She pretended to be dissuading me, but her tone was smug. Too bad for you. If you hadn't plotted against me back then, you could have been the lady of the William family. At least he's normal. I eyed the scarf around her neck. So he's normal at beating you, right? That made Olivia freeze, like a chicken grabbed by its throat, speechless for a moment. It was one thing if her private misery stayed hidden, but to have me say it aloud left her flustered. After an angry fit, she stomped off with a "just you wait." I had no clue what Olivia told the William clan, but she didn't return to them for days. Considering William's extreme possessiveness, he wouldn't let his partner stay away so long. She remained with the Isabellas until the Daniel family showed up. And what a show it was. 3 vehicles lined up by our gate, plus drivers and housekeepers who started unloading gift after gift, stunning all the neighbors. I'd never seen something like that outside of television. Olivia was dressed to the nines. The moment she spotted the Daniel family's people, she hurried over excitedly. The classy-looking middle-aged woman asked, "Is this Isabella?" Olivia's smile stiffened. Then she broke into an even bigger grin. "I'm Olivia." At that, the refined lady's reaction, she flicked away the hand that Olivia eagerly reached out to clasp. Noticing me, who appeared identical to Olivia, she smiled and stepped closer. "You must be Isabella. Such a delightful child." In front of everyone, Olivia was shut out. From early on, she was accustomed to hearing compliments about herself, so how could she accept such dismissal? Her features twisted with rage, and she completely forgot her surroundings, just glaring at me intensely. Daniel's mother gestured for her son to move forward. "Daniel, this is Sister Isabella. Say hello." Daniel looked roughly my age, but his gaze was childlike. Grandma and the others warmly ushered the Daniel family into the house, except James, who remained outside, fixated on the 3 vehicles, too fascinated to come in. During the meal, Grandma tirelessly praised her granddaughter while I stayed silent. The Daniel family members, clearly well-bred, waited until Grandma quieted down from talking before speaking. "I'd like to talk with Isabella alone." Upon hearing this, Grandma shot me a cautionary glance, and Olivia, despite her reluctance, still wanted to butt in. Yet the Daniel family paid her no attention from start to finish. Daniel's father kept silent, leaving Daniel's mother to handle the conversation. I followed Daniel's mother into the room, where she observed the contrasting beds and, pointing at the small single bed, remarked, "That's where you sleep, right?" After I confirmed it, she continued, "You must dislike being treated differently. Should you join the Daniel family, you'll be the one others admire one day." I replied, "I'm already admired now." Daniel's mother broke into laughter. "Yes, you're quite sensible, but being part of the Daniel family can offer you more." I understood a mother's wish to protect her child, so I asked, "Are you truly comfortable letting a stranger in? What if, when you're gone, your son ends up—" She gazed at me without emotion, and I met her stare wordlessly. When we emerged, Olivia, who had been listening by the door, nearly toppled over as the door flew open. The Isabella family, desperate to find out what Daniel's mother and I discussed, was too frightened to question me while the Daniel family was there, so they paced around nervously. The moment the Daniel family departed, they crowded around me. "Well, how was it? Did they like you?" It felt as though I was a pig in a pen awaiting the butcher's approval. Daniel's mother said nothing, I answered, which frustrated them. They vented their anger, accusing me of not talking properly. Olivia ridiculed me. I knew it. "You should have introduced them to me instead, you block of wood." Before she could get all the words out, someone dashed in, seized her hair, and yelled, "You tricked me into helping your family, yet you wanted to climb the social ladder behind my back. So that's why I tipped you off." The intruder arrived right on cue. For the first time, William exposed his real self in front of the Isabella household, who were so terrified that no one dared to interfere. Only after he finished thrashing Olivia did he stop on his own. "Listen up," he warned. "Don't imagine selling one girl to two families. Destroying your Isabella clan would be child's play for me." Agitated by the possibility of being cheated on behind the scenes, William delivered his threat on the spot. Grandma, fierce only inside her own walls, was speechless, and so were Dad and James, both Mama's boys and Grandma's boys. William dragged Olivia away like a slaughtered hog. It wasn't until his car disappeared in the distance that Dad slumped on the floor. Grandma trembled in fury, yet remained powerless, ultimately directing her anger at Mom and me. Mom, like a clay figurine, hung her head, taking it without argument. I refused to yield and asked, "Do you want the Daniel family to attack the Isabella family as well?" Even though I had only met them once, it didn't stop me from bluffing by leaning on their influence. Finally, Grandma had brought this upon herself. Noticing her face twist repeatedly, I felt a wave of satisfaction. I left the crestfallen group and returned to my room, remembering Daniel's mother's words. Reality was nothing like Grandma's claim that the Daniel family wanted to marry the Isabella granddaughter. Daniel's mother only had one son. An accident had reduced his mental capacity to that of a small child. Worried about him having no caretaker after her passing, she discovered she could find someone willing to connect with him and watch over him. Reflecting on how Daniel's mother said she would pay my expenses and treat me like a foster daughter, I wondered why people of that status liked to form godparent ties. Whatever, there was no downside for me. I remained myself, still preparing for the college entrance test. This time, Olivia suffered major injuries and didn't return to the Isabella household for days. Later, the Daniel family repeatedly sent presents, giving the Isabella family fresh hope and swelling their conceit. James was most affected, always hanging around small-time thugs. Now he believed he had some backing and acted like a bully, stirring trouble. He went too far in a fight and killed someone. Even while arrested, he kept boasting about his brother-in-law, claiming he'd be out soon. Dad even barged in on the victim's kin, spewing insults. They assaulted him in fury. He survived, but a vital injury left him paralyzed from the chest down, bedridden for life, with no more chance to play tough. Grandma simultaneously lost two male heirs and suffered a stroke from anger. In the end, she and James lay paralyzed in bed, half the family ruined. Olivia, resentful that nobody protected her from William before, occasionally appeared to sneer at the two bedridden figures. Only Mom, quietly toiling away like a worn-out ox, tended to them both. I asked her why she stayed. She stared blankly and said, "Where else would I go? My home's here." Right then, I gave up. I had meant to take her away so she could start fresh, but you can't awaken someone determined to remain asleep. Let her be. I'd just mail money regularly, calling it respect for my elders. After that, Daniel's mother often invited me to their home to keep Daniel company, this almost free little brother. Next to James, Daniel was an angel, mild and calm. Grandma would sometimes phone me to complain that Olivia dropped by to harass her. Hearing Grandma's unclear sobs, I always felt impatient. I'd set the phone aside and let her rant until she was done. If I hung up, she would report my unfilial behavior to the village committee. Though not unlawful, it was aggravating. My family's now the laughingstock of the village. Neighbors mock Grandma's fortune-telling boasts, saying that her adored Olivia didn't bring wealth but ended up either locked away or paralyzed, worsening Grandma's condition. She could hardly speak now, only whimpering, while everyone jeered at her superstition and how it doomed the Isabella family. Daniel, who had suffered brain damage in the Daniel household, actually recovered. Word of that spread like wildfire, feeding the public's appetite for rumors. So it turned out and Olivia really existed in the Isabella family, but she was the older one. It all lined up. Only after the eldest left did calamities descend on the Isabellas. Hence, they said Olivia was cursed. Village gossip spared no one, so these stories soon reached Olivia's ears, and, as expected, the William family found out too. In the midst of an economic slump, their business wasn't thriving, and William's temper had gotten worse ever since marrying Olivia. Upon hearing the rumors, they placed all blame on her. Since they had never obtained a marriage license, they simply booted her out, and no one objected. She had once left to marry with such pomp, and now slunk back in disgrace, ridiculed by onlookers. How could the proud Olivia take it? She started berating Grandma daily for believing in superstition and spewing nonsense, which humiliated her and ruined her life. Then one day, in a blind rage, she actually smothered Grandma with a pillow. By chance, village committee members came to check on them and caught her in the act. Olivia got jailed for murder. Dad witnessed Grandma's killing, but, being paralyzed, couldn't voice a protest. Seeing his daughter kill his mother left him mentally disturbed. At times, he'd scream, "Don't kill me," and other times, he'd mumble about his son-in-law being some hotshot. Mom grew even more silent, like a machine spinning around Dad's bed. Within a single year, the Isabella family wound up with some deceased and some in prison, and I felt a pang realizing I was the only sane person left. "Sis, I want to go to your college too." I turned to spot Daniel, who had recovered well. Though the Daniels weren't superstitious, they treated me like their own. Of all the people around, you were the only one who regarded Daniel as normal, chatting with him. Once you came, he improved. It's only fair that you're part of our family. Glancing over at Daniel then, I thought, this is what a little brother should be. All right, let's do it. I walked back from school with Daniel. Our silhouettes stretched out behind us as we proceeded. Those bound by blood aren't always real kin. People with sincere hearts are.